Alright, hey guys, so this is going to be a discussion about stats for Vengeance for 725. So a couple things have changed. For the most part, as far as DPS and Mythic Plus prios, nothing's changed. It's still the same as they've always been. Um, but the Raid Survival prio has changed because Nighthold was very heavy in magic damage, and Demon Spikes, we didn't need more uptime on it that much. There was only one or two bosses that you wanted more uptime on, and generally you could do that with the tier and with Demonic Infusion. So haste wasn't very good, and mastery was good, but it wasn't as needed because it only affects physical damage and not magic damage. So a couple things have changed. So going into Tomb of Sargeras, it's more of a traditional damage taken where it's mostly physical with some magic. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it up. So Demon Spikes is going to become a key part of survivability rotation. And uh, so Haste and Mastery are going to matter a bit more. So to start things off, for the Raid Survival Prio, it's going to be Haste to 20%. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Then it's going to be Mastery. And then it's going to be Versatility. And then it's going to be Haste past 20%. And then Crit. So going through it all. So haste to 20%. The reason for this is a few things. It gives us a few things, and some of them didn't matter as much as they used to. But to start things off, it maximizes firebrand uptime, so you can get an extra couple seconds of firebrand depending on your haste, and it caps at about 15.5% haste is what's needed for the minimum, but that's assuming zero latency. So if you have any latency at all, it's going to increase the haste requirements. And so 20% gives us a nice leeway for that. So we'll be able to maximize our firebrand uptime by maximizing our immolation auras uh, within the firebrand window. And then next, it's also going to bring up the amount of GCDs that we can have during Painbringer, so that way we can ensure that we get 3 GCDs in for each Painbringer as opposed to 2 and sometimes 3. That way we can maximize the amount of uptime on it and maximize the amount of like fractures and pain generation going into it, as well as like Spirit Bomb and things like that. It'll also give us some more Demon Spikes and Immolation Aura uptime. It'll give you closer to about 50% uptime on Demon Spikes. And then with Demonic Infusion, you can get 70% or higher uptime, which is plenty. And so far in Heroic, I haven't needed more Demon Spikes uptime except on Kil'jaeden is the only fight that I've wanted more Demon Spikes uptime, but it's only once or twice on the fight, and it's only for a couple seconds. And if you get the legs, those pretty much take care of that issue. But I run Demonic Infusion on that fight anyway, so that saves me some times there. It'll give us 8 more GCDs in a minute. So overall, our GCDs will increase. So we'll get more actions in, more pain generation, more fractures, more soul generation, etc. And it'll finally it'll also help make maintaining the tier 22 piece, the debuff. It'll make it easier to maintain because um, you're going to have more soul generation, and so you're going to be consuming souls faster, so you can make sure that you get 100% uptime on that. And then next is going to be mastery. So I put it as haste to 20% greater than equal to mastery. The reason why I did that is because the 20% isn't a hard rule. It's not going to be you're going to give up 20 eye level for it. You're not going to give up more than 10 eye level for it at any point in time. The eye level rules still stand. 15 or higher, equip it. 10 or lower, look at the stats. At 5, you have to ensure to look at the stats. At 10, you're going to look at it. You're going to factor in the eye level, but it's going to be dependent on what the stats are. You're gonna weigh in the stats and the eye level together. If it's more than 10, it's all eye level. If it's lower than 10, then it's going to be stats. And obviously, necks and trinkets and rings are different from that because they don't have main stat on them. They don't have the armor and the agility. So those will be different. Those will rely more heavily on stats as opposed to the rest of the pieces. But okay, so anyway, go back into it. So then haste to 20% greater than equal to mastery. So you want more mastery to get more damage reduction on demon spikes, which will help heavily on fights like Kill Jaden, especially where a lot of people have issues on, and a lot of people will just heavily favor mastery on that fight for the extra mitigation. And then after that is give me versatility for the extra base mitigation, including mainly for the magic mitigation. And then after that, haste past 20%, and then crit. So, like I said, this isn't a hard rule. You're not going to give up a ton of eye level for it. It's realistically, you're not even going to get the 20%, and or you're going to hover around it. You're not always going to have 20%, and you're not going to be, it's not, you're going to be a terrible demon hunter because you don't have 20%. There's guys that will do just fine with 10%. There's guys that will run 30%. It doesn't matter. Like, it's not, stats don't mean nearly as much as people think they are. The people who care the most about stats are people at the casual level, which is ironic because the hardcore really don't give a crap about the stats. It's they figure out what the stat prio is and then they just kind of go from there. And as far as demon hunters are involved, most of us at the high end, actually all of us at the high end, I don't think any person cares about the stats on the gear. It's like, okay, this has some better stats and this is the same eye level, then I'm gonna equip it. But if it's 10 or more eye level, most people just equip it offhand anyway. Like it, so people, you guys worry too much about stats, and you think that stats are gonna make or break you. The only place that stats can help, or that really help, is hardcore progression, and that's more of like top 10, top 50, even maybe not even top 50 at the super high end. And even then, it sometimes, some guys will go more for DPS prio as far as tanks go. So it's just, I just want you guys to know, like, you're overthinking it most times in Discord and stuff. Just you guys overthink it. Don't have a more casual mindset, which is ironic in this case, but just kind of you got to go with it. You can't, like, people post up in Discord all the time. They'll go, I have 18% crit, 20% haste, 11% verse, 26 mastery. What should I do? And the answer every single time, follow the prio, and if you get drops, you get drops, because you can't make gear magically appear. You can do the content, and you're not always going to get the best gear. You're not always going to get the gear with the best stats for you. So if I have if I get two helms, one's a 920 with haste and mastery, and then I get a 940 that has crit and verse, I'm going to equip the 940 even though it's crit and verse, because it has the eye level, it has the armor and the agility and stamina, and that outweighs it. So just calm down with it. It's not as big of a deal as you think, and it's definitely not going to make or break you. I have done like, I don't look at my stats that much, only a little bit. And this prio, nobody at the high end is really going to follow it, I don't think. It's like we all know about it and we all agree with it, but not many people are going to follow it because they're going to follow basically the eye level rule. And some guys might favor a little more DPS and stuff, and that's another thing too. So looking at the armories of people tells you almost nothing. The only thing you can really tell from an armory is what talents they use, what trinkets they use, legendaries, and the what stats they're going for based on what they have enchanted. That's all you can tell. And you can't always tell that because you can't always tell all that info because trinkets, legendaries, and talents are all based on what you're doing. For us, you can generally run the same things for everything. There's some guys that will run Cinedaria and Kil'jaedens or Archimons for everything, and they'll run the same exact talents. Like the only thing I change up on my talents is Sigil of Chains. Like I'll use Sigil of Chains in dungeons, and raid I'll use Conch Sigils. That's like the only thing I change up, and then I change up the last row based on how lazy I am, and I'll do a talent video another time. But I just wanted to try to help people to understand how stats, like the reasoning for the stats, and how higher level players, quote unquote, go about things. It's not nearly as hardcore as people think it is. It's not about the min maxing. It's you just go with the flow. If you get gear, you get gear. If you can't get gear, like you can be 930 and have all crit verse gear or all crit haste gear or whatever. The crit is excessive these days. There's so much crit everywhere. It's crazy. So there's numerous guys that are top tier tanks that will have 30, 40, even 40% crit. I know some guys that have 40% crit or had at one point, but they were still able to tank and they were still able to do well. Stats won't make or break you, and everybody just kind of needs to realize that, and it'll just help you relax a little bit. So posting that stuff up in Discord means nothing to us. We'll tell you just follow the prio. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and sorry for the long rant, but I just felt like something needed to be said, and hopefully you took something from it and got a glimpse of how things actually work a bit at the higher end. So thank you, and have a good one.